And we went to Disney World, there was so many, they thought we were a school group.
We are live. It is Friday morning and it's a little chilly out there this morning with a lot of mosquitoes. But other than that, okay, we're going to continue our discussion. We're switching, or continuing with the motor vehicle department. And we are pleased to have Anthea Dexter Cooper with us this morning. We haven't seen her yet this year. She's certainly the asset of this committee. We're glad she's still with us.
And she has L-car too. Oh, what a.
She does it all. She does
Just
it all.
those two things.
What? Just L-car?
Transportation and all.
An L-car.
I think we're going to be talking about the EMB miscellaneous bill, is that correct?
That is correct. Would you like me to share the bill up on the screen?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
Great, I will log into your Zoom.
Great.
47 pages of pure bliss.
Wanda wrote it all. She sat home at night and wrote that whole thing.
Thank you, Anthea.
So as I'm joining your Zoom room, I will mention that a lot of it will be very similar to what was in your miscellaneous motor vehicle bill from last year, which since it didn't pass, you are.
Section 33 since last year.
There's a lot of new stuff too.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the Zoom link.
Page one.
Yeah.
Always go in back first.
I think she starts from the back.
I read the newspaper from the back, and I read a magazine from the back.
Would you do me a big favor?
All right.
Page one with
All
us?
right,
Okay.
sorry.
Mike, can you send me the Zoom link? It's not in my calendar. But
You are certainly very,
Too much?
well, that might be one way of saying it.
It's not red. But it doesn't go with your jacket.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I had an uncle, Jean-Guy Bellevaux, who was widely known for always wearing a pink sport coat at UVM. I wear this in honor of his memory.
Back to UVM.
Louise Penny.
I hear about UVM so much, I feel like I'm an alumni. Okay, an honorary alumni.
One of our members, he'll do anything to keep his job.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He takes a boot
chance.
All right.
He was up there standing in the driveway this morning, I heard.
Okay, sorry, let's get.
Oh, that's okay. I'm actually just waiting for Mike to send me the
Okay, all right.
Zoom link.
Are we alive? No,
Yes.
we're alive.
You are live. I just don't have access to it just yet.
Think you're working on, he's got it. Let me know if I can help. Like, we are gonna get an HDMI cable in here so that.
We already talked.
Just waiting for them to arrive.
Nice.
That'll make it easier for this morning. Again, on Monday, they said it should be next week. So that's what they have at the house. We gotta keep up with the house.
Well, not necessarily.
Keep your head.
Senator Kitchell said, we're way ahead.
There we go. Just got it. I'm just gonna need for you to let me in. Perfect, thank you. And can you give me sharing access? There we go. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so this is posted to the committee page on today's date under my name. It says draft 3.1 at the top of it, but it is the first draft that you have. The drafts prior to this were back and forth with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Subjects are there. I will update those as it changes. Statement of the purpose of the bill proposes to make miscellaneous changes to laws related to vehicles. Section 1, this will look very familiar to you. This was included in S280 as it passed, was introduced and passed the Senate, and the House agreed with it in its proposal of amendment. This is the clarification for the new motor vehicle arbitration, also known as the Lemon Law, where if you bring a claim, you have 1 year from the expiration of the express warranty to start the process. The clarification, and this is going to be on page 2, is there is some ambiguity, I would say, and the Transportation Board, the new Motor Vehicle Arbitration Board agreed because they suggested this for the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, on lines 6 to 9, where if there is a repair that's made partway through the process, sort of closing the process, if the individual chooses, they can close the proceedings, but they do not have prejudice against them to restart them, so the consumer can resume the proceedings, right, to request that the arbitration be recommenced. And this language says, if the repair was in the existing law, line 7 and 8, if the repair proves unsatisfactory for the duration of the express warranty, that's unclear as to whether or not it needs to be unsatisfactory for the entire year. What happens if it's unsatisfactory in that year post expiration of express warranty? So instead, it's linking it to the period that you have to bring the initial claim. So it's that 1 year post express warranty expiration.
Yes, go ahead.
Is express in this instant not meaning quickly?
No.
Like expressly.
Yeah. Yes. And I believe it's defined other places in the chapter. I can check.
But it's what normal people would just call double.
Yeah, probably.
Now that is that new to this?
So it is not new. It was in S280, that was your miscellaneous motor vehicle bill last year. So let's.
The one that went nowhere.
Went to the
It went
house.
somewhere.
I know, but it was not enacted.
But it
It was
is,
not an active.
where it went, some people consider it nowhere.
Right, but we have seen this and we support it.
You've seen this, you supported it, and the House supported it. It was not one of the points of contention between the two versions of the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill. I will continue to mention that as we go along.
I think we should close that out. Seriously, no, I mean, why would we, there's no basis to revisit, or hold it, I.
Okay, we can do that.
We should close it out.
Except,
I think we had definition of mail.
You did not, this one is new. You've seen amendments to the definition of mail in the past. It was related to the commercial motor vehicle operations. This would be adding to 23 VSA section 4, which is your main definition section for all of Title 23, the definition of mail and its respective iterations. It would mean any method of delivery that's authorized by the commissioner, but it's not prescribing what would be in any particular instance the means of delivery. It would give flexibility to the commissioner, and it's saying that it may include hand, US mail, and electronic transmission. And this would allow department flexibility in terms of transitioning to things like portals or allowing email communication beyond just through US mail, which is what people might think of with the phrase.
So, we did do something with mail.
Yes.
Is this language changing what we did previously, or is it taking this and make it consistent with what we did earlier?
That expanding upon the narrow instances where you expanded the definition of mail. This is now saying anytime mail is used in Title 23, it has that broader definition.
So this is consistent with what we did
Exactly.
before, just expanding where.
Everybody like that?
Sure, let's close it.
Okay, good. Closed?
And this would take effect on passage. You now have, this is new language, this would take effect on 11/1/23, these next few sections. This is dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles plan to stop issuing the validation stickers that go on license plates, the ones that give you the registration date through. It does not change what is issued for boats. The numbering scheme is required under federal law. It would not change the decals that are issued for snowmobiles or ATVs. So this is really just the small sticker that goes on license plates.
What's it doing, sorry?
Wouldn't get it.
the one that you looked in the parking lot and they were all out of date, you just wouldn't have it
You
anymore.
wouldn't have-
They wouldn't be made available. You wouldn't be required to display it. It's eliminating the existence of the concept of the validation sticker.
So how would anyone know what the car is registered?
I'll leave the answer to that to the department when I see.
Okay.
Someone from the department has raised her hand.
You're so concerned about having a front plate, now you don't know if you're going to stick to the back plate.
So all of the information on a vehicle, and if you speak to law enforcement, it comes from the plate. They all have access to that registration plate. That plate is your registration.
You probably
It's
can't even
signed to the
see that little
vehicle.
sticker.
And you're absolutely correct, Senator Kitchell. So the information is there, and the information on the vehicle also is connected to their inspection sticker, which officers have that information.
Also, you would no longer, the plate would no longer have a sticker, because you wouldn't have to mail the sticker.
That's correct. That's correct, and it will support enhancement of online registrations, which then with this language on mail, not to get into the overall, you can either print your registration if you go online, or you will be able to utilize it by signing up in the portal to have your registration on your phone, and some people do want that. Anyone that mails in their registration or comes into a branch office will still get their paper copy like they do. We will no longer have to have special printers, special envelopes, special printing by BGS. We'll still work with them, and they'll still print our bulk. And we do anticipate, once we're fully live with the system and with support of this language, we will see a savings in our operation budget.
What about plates, new plates, is it automatically every so many years you get new plates, or you have to request them? You see plates out there that are just.
So the faded plates, you're referring to so we don't, the faded plates are, you can request a replacement free of charge, but you cannot have the same plate number. If you want the same plate number on the faded plates, there is a fee, and I'm looking at Mike because he's $24. He's got 240 fees in his brain. $24. And we don't know if people are not replacing them because they're discouraged because of the fee, or they'll like the fact that you can't read their plate.
Is it a requirement that
We have not, it is not a requirement.
I thought at one time you could request if your plate was visible, you could request one, do no charge.
Mike, maybe some history here.
Effective batch or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So, Mike Smith.
Yeah.
So if you have a faded plate, you want the same number, we require the replacement plate fee. If you notify us that it's faded, you just want a new number, we grab one off the shelf and mail it to you.
Right, but Senator Mazza said at one time when we had the bad inventory, he thought we were replacing those automatically.
No, the problem was we couldn't determine specifically which ones were bad, because there was a whole bunch of series that were printed with, it didn't have enough of the thinner or whatever. So, but there was a whole few year time frame, so we had somewhat of an idea, but then the other problem is not all of them faded.
So in other words, if someone has a plate number 6743 or something, they want that same number, it's gonna cost them $24.
If
Otherwise,
it's faded.
yes.
And they asked to have it replaced.
So, but they can drive with that plate. There's no law that says you can drive that plate forever and you can't read it.
Well, I believe the statute says that it needs to be legible. The problem is.
I just don't-
law enforcement interaction.
If someone wants to pay $24, I just want, that's quite a bit of money sometimes, or something. But that's what they want. They don't want the same number. They just get a register, request one to get free.
And Senator, my understanding, the logic behind that is we have series of plates pre-printed and we have existing inventory that we have paid for. If we start to do individual replacements for all of those faded plates, then there's a cost, and that has an impact on corrections and what their production is, because they would have to make each plate separately.
So on the registrations, you won't mail out the paper registrations anymore?
We will. We will. The vision is expanding the online, and because I can't assume that everyone has a printer.
Right.
So if you go online, our plan was if you choose, you'll be able to download it or print it yourself, and that would be one less that we would have to mail out. Because once you go online, you log in, you're in the portal, you've renewed, that data's there, and it's immediate to law enforcement and DMV that your vehicle's registered.
But since it is just all there in the computer, why do motorists need to have a copy of the vehicle?
I believe that would go to law enforcement, even though they validated it. I think they are looking for registration insurance at
I know, but
point of
they already
sale.
know if it's registered by looking at running the plates, right?
Yeah, I don't
Is it
have an
close
answer
to-
to that. Do you have a response to that, Tony?
Director Tony Finkes, Enforcement and Safety. It's still going to be customary for law enforcement to ask to see a driver's vehicle credentials. A lot of things can also transpire from that. For example, if it's a stolen vehicle, they might not know where the document could be. They're still, so during that interaction. So it's still, ideally, we want to see that vehicle, goes to the paperwork goes to that vehicle, even though we can validate on the backside with, through the computer system. So other than that, I mean, it's, again, whether the credential could be stored electronically or paper in the vehicle.
What's a paper in the back window of a car? You know, if you see a paper in the back.
That's the temporary registration right now. That's that, you can go online, for $6, get that temporary, plate.
How
But
long is that good for?
you could just, that's 60 days.
Yeah, a neighbor of mine, over 2 years, he still got the paper in the window. And he registered, I think, a week ago, 2 years. In fact, he worked for me for a while, but he had that paper in the back window and he never, I was wondering how to tell you.
Well, it was illegal apparently based on that after, those
Okay, but that paper was supposed to give him 30 days or something.
60.
So
It's like a temporary plate.
that goes back to, if you remember pre-COVID, we were talking about individuals not being able to register if they bought a boat or a mobile home in another state over the weekend. So that was a system we put in place. And then with COVID, because you couldn't come in, we were doing the temporary registrations. We've learned from that system when we first put in, anybody was able to register. We have limited registration on that portal to just Vermont residents. And you have to have a PID and also to 2. Because we did have some fraudulent activities in the beginning that were occurring. And it's actually a successful program. I think we do about I feel like 60,000 is the number. I'm looking at my, until they can come into the office and again, we put more security into that, so there are limits.
So evidently, when the police see that piece of paper in the window, they assume that it's registered.
And
They register the exact
They
time.
could probably go in, just like they could with a plate, and see if it is
Right.
expired.
Yeah, that's the only way. Like I said, he was over 2 years with it, so.
So it's not commercially available on our mainframe. There is a back door that we've provided to law enforcement and the PSAP centers that do dispatching, so that they can go in and look into the system to see, yes, this is the place who it belongs to, it's valid.
One of those paper plates.
Correct.
So the paper plates you could print yourself, can you also write them out? Because I've seen some that are like handwritten with a Sharpie.
no, you're not supposed to write them out. I believe this is one of the things that we talk about internally. As we move to online, we can't assume everyone has a printer,
Right.
right? Some people do business from their iPhone, so we're really sensitive to that. The handwritten ones, we believe are coming from that registration and they're given that number, but they can't print it.
They're not supposed to be handwritten. They're supposed to come into the office and get a printed one if they don't have their own printer.
We've never really said that to them, so.
Because my son had a friend that had a handwritten one. He said he was fine for months in Vermont, but he went to New Hampshire twice and got pulled over both times. Right away. He had to explain why he had a handwritten.
Then why did he have a handwritten?
He said he didn't have a printer.
And that was okay.
It has to be, I mean, we have to.
He just doesn't like look at
you
his
know,
arm on his phone.
And I think what's more important is the lessons learned, and like Mike said, there is access to validate that, and they should have it on, hopefully they have it on their phone or another way to show that they've registered it.
Okay,
Okay, so section 3, just striking out the word validation sticker throughout. You will see in some places throughout the next few sections where it currently says number of plates, since there are not 2 plates issued for every vehicle, adding in unnumbered plate or number plates just to provide clarity there. some eliminations of gendered language. On page 3, lines 14 to 16, this is one of,
Go back to plural, I thought with the front plate debate, everybody wanted plates. So you're saying number plate or number plates?
so the commissioner has discretion to choose whether or not to issue a number plate, like for motorcycles, or number plates, like for pleasure car vehicles. So this is just being clear throughout that the commissioner shall issue a registration certificate and a number plate or number plate, so that this phrasing is consistent with other parts of statute where it's providing the commissioner with the ability to not.
Well, I don't know, that's right. Does that mean the commissioner could actually say,
You don't have to
we're
set
gonna
up the
eliminate
plate.
the front plate?
I think the commissioner has the authority.
Uh-oh.
All right.
So you
You're
don't
gonna
have,
get a request from
So you don't
Mr.
have-
Corvette owner.
you don't have to have 2 plates.
That's right. Well,
You
I
do.
think that flexible language does allow that. I think, you know, the conversation has always really been around law enforcement and being visually.
just thought I'd point that out.
I like this one.
Yeah.
I get that law enforcement doesn't need the little stickers, but maybe I look to Mr. Smith here in the room, but is there any commercial applications or fleet management techniques that people do want to use those stickers? They can visually inspect locks or otherwise don't necessarily want this requirement to go away. No, they come to mind.
No, sir.
This would take effect on November 1 of 2023.
Because the system goes live on November 13th, so we requested the language on some of this lineup with the rolling out of the vehicles, because we can't do it before.
I noticed some electric vehicles have no front plate, they don't have a place for it.
The Teslas don't have the holes like the.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so
Yeah, and the Corvette doesn't either.
you don't have any place to put a plate. How would you, that's why, so you always feel you're in violation of law, but there's no place to put the plate.
You're a lawbreaker.
Unless you, yeah, you're right, that's right. Unless you bend the plate, drill 2 holes in the front, you put the plate on. That's what the problem is, my concern about it. Because they don't come through with
How many
brackets.
states don't allow for, you
I
know?
don't know. I know it's not all of them.
But now we see you just have to appeal to one, and she probably could say, well, for you, Senator Marsden, you only have to have 1 plate.
I can drive in the daytime.
I believe the language is, gives the commissioner the ability to not issue both, but if you are issued both, you're required to display both. I believe that's the way that the statute.
Ooh, she has a lot of power. How about you, Mike? You got that same power? No. Okay.
Of course he does.
Okay,
Okay, so page 3, lines 14 to 16, this is one of, I believe it's 2 instances in these sections that we're seeing about validation stickers that addresses the fact that there's language that requires the validation stickers to be issued, but then there's also language in statute that requires the validation stickers to be displayed, eliminating the language that requires it to be displayed, because if there are no stickers, there's nothing to display.
So do we want to agree with this?
yes. Well, anybody have?
All right, then let's close this baby out.
Because that's gonna close out sections 3 through
Wow.
Yep, there are a lot of sections that use the word validation sticker.
And Commissioner, when you.
Well, I don't want to close out, this is for refund upon loss of vehicle.
So what you're changing there is just the fact that you don't have to return a validation sticker that doesn't exist.
Okay, so that's refund of the sticker, huh?
It's canceling the registration if there's the loss of the vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
And the substantive change is saying that after the commissioner cancels the registration and the owner returns to the commissioner either the registration certificate or the number plates and the validation sticker, you can't require them to return a validation sticker that they haven't been issued.
Okay, let me ask one other question.
Took all that section.
If an officer stops you for a no front plate, what are you supposed to say? Commissioner okayed it?
You just have a picture.
I'll give
on
you a
the-
letter,
No,
Senator.
I'm just curious for anyone that's not, what's the answer?
Well, you're required to display your two plates.
Yep.
And there are instances like with the Vermont Strong plate where you don't have to have a front
That's
plate,
right.
but you do actually have to have it underneath the Vermont Strong plate.
Yeah.
I was saying that I think the commissioner has the authority under statute, it sounds like she agrees, that she could choose to stop having front plates. Law enforcement would not necessarily be supportive of that, but at this point, they're issuing two plates and you need to display both of them.
Okay, so nothing changes until she makes a decision.
To issue one plate.
Oh,
Angie, are you saying she has, or the commissioner has the authority to do that on a case-by-case basis, or just in general?
No, I think just in general to make the decision. I would need to go back and look at the statute, but I don't think the commissioner has the authority to sort of say
so
use
nothing
other
changes.
places.
It's the same.
Right.
It's in violation.
Except she's got the authority.
Yeah, but she hasn't decided that.
No, but in the past, we've tried to legislate it, remember?
Yeah, there was a study on how much money would be saved. There was a lot of testimony when I've been asked this and I sort of go back through your records. I don't know if it was necessarily in the Senate, but in the House from law enforcement talking about how they want to be able to have that.
Yeah.
That front plate.
Tony, what's your thought? You're in law enforcement.
Well, at first, all your motorcycles were issued one plate. There's gets into a lot of other technologies that are available, maybe not in Vermont, but like license plate readers, which have been extremely effective tools.
But you did away with, excuse me, you did away with the readers on the police cars.
Yes, we did here in Vermont, but I'm saying that there are multiple other points across the country on our highways and roads where there's a variety of technology like that, where it is very advantageous to solving serious crime.
Yeah.
And I know even on Pillier, we were successful in, solving crimes based on other states. And some of those are not publicly known, but that's the reason behind, I remember the old argument was, well, there was a car that hit a snowbank, and left a plate number, the snowbank and helped us solve a crime in like the 1970s or something.
Wow.
But I will say that law enforcement also too, when they're responding to a violent crime, the lights are on, their mobile video recorder is active. So it also is important for getting information for follow-up in case, like, let's say you're going to a robbery on Waitsfield, and you're on 100, it's good to, you're tracking any of those other vehicles that are going by you. You can, after the fact, look that up if you need to. For example, if the description of the vehicle was a blue Mazda four-door, and hey, looking back at what that trooper maybe had recorded, so those are some reasons operationally why law enforcement has always been very concerned.
Why did they do away with the plate reader? If that was effective, why did they do away with it?
We weren't using it in its full capacity from a crime standpoint, and it was very problematic from a public trust concern. How long that data was stored, where we were capturing that.
I remember that. Okay.
It's an incredibly powerful tool,
That's what I thought.
and so based on all of those, it was not.
It was a
It's
private.
no longer
source.
worth it for us to, and specifically to our shop at DMV with commercial vehicle enforcement. That's why now, without using it manually, but we have the C-View, the Commercial Vehicle Information Exchange window, which gives us a lot of data from both DOT, our records, our records management system here in Vermont, and anything else we need from other states. So we've had other ways to be effective, in what we do here at DMV.
I remember that because they said it was privacy, it was stored in the cloud for many years.
Everything's a balance when it comes to how, what are the expectations to how we're policing and how to do it.
Okay, yes.
One last thing on the stickers.
Yeah.
Commissioner, do you have an estimate of what the savings will be, just in general?
So we did a rough estimate moving in, so we anticipate, we made some guesses on online based on current practice, so a little over 600,000 in production, and those costs are the mailing we didn't really touch at this point because we don't know what that is going to be, but it's the special paper, it's the cost of doing it. We currently pay TD Bank $48,000 a year to do lock boxes. which is they actually accept and process some of the registration, and we would be able to eliminate that, for example, because you would not need stickers. We would not see the full
Did you
savings.
say, how does eliminating stickers connect to the lockbox?
It's the registration.
So.
You still register, you know.
Right, it's the global scheme, the scheme's probably the bad word to use, but, as we move into online services and people are renewing online, over time, the lockbox service will no longer be needed because people, as we graduate into the future, will be doing the majority of the stuff.
Even checks now, people are trying to minimize the use of checks because the banks are charging so much, they want to really do it through electronic transfers rather than the checks
Four
themselves.
checks left on a holdout.
Well, well,
What's the cost of producing an extra plate? If we would just say we're 2 plates, say we went to 1 plate, what's the cost savings?
oh, we've done that before.
So there's a whole bunch of questions that come along with that. So do we want to completely reissue everybody, in which case we're sending all, 700,000 vehicles a brand new plate? That's pretty costly. To advise people, just take your front plate off if your plates are still good. That has its own challenges too, because where does that front plate end up? Does it end up in the back of some other car? Right? I mean, so some thought has to be put into how you would actually play that out. So to say the savings, when we did the study, we looked at moving to flat plates, and that had a whole different cost that went along with it because all of a sudden corrections needs all kinds of new equipment because right now they're doing the DBOS, right? So lots of thought and questions.
By commissioner decree, we could just not require 2 plates, and then when they register, they could choose 1 or 2 plates and pay $12 or $24. We just didn't mandate it.
Well, I think if you were to do that, to me, the message would be you go to 1 plate, so we'd only be issuing 1 plate. We would not be able to manage inventory of a choice. I want 2 plates, I want 1 plate, because right now our production from corrections, we get 2 plates, unless it's a motorcycle, for example. So the envelope, their production, it's 2 plates. So then we, and to Mike's point, we don't want to print 2 plates and then only issue 1.
Okay, go ahead.
And if I can just go back and finish, so our estimate would not be realized fully in this upcoming fiscal year because we don't start
November.
issuance until later in the year. I just wanted to point that out.
But you would for 3/4.
Yes. That would be our goal, Senator.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead to section 13 then, and that's gonna be on page 10.
okay, section 13, all right.
We have talked a bit already about how registrations are being made available online and you would be able to print it out. Under current law, you are required to carry your registration certificate with you. It says you shall not operate a motor vehicle unless the registration certificates are carried in some easily accessible place in the motor vehicle. I don't know if it would cover, for purposes of law enforcement's review of this and enforcement, if on your phone is carried in some easily accessible place in the motor vehicle. This language makes it clear that you could have your registration certificate electronically on a portable electronic device. And then it tracks the language that you added a few years ago when you allowed for proof of insurance to be shown on a portable electronic device. That use of a device for this purpose does not give law enforcement access to the other contents of the device. So if you showed your registration, then it would just be for law enforcement to look, see your registration, not to take your phone and have access to other information on it. So this approach is consistent with current law as it relates to the ability to show proof of insurance on your phone.
You're gonna have to go to school to register your car pretty soon.
Right, this is,
So that means you don't have to have a paper copy in your vehicle.
If you instead have it on your phone.
I just don't know why.
But you
anybody-
certainly could still have the paper copy.
I just don't even know why anybody would just want to take the chance.
Although,
And over their
um,
device.
the only thing I would say is oftentimes, you might have, I don't know, sometimes somebody might use your car. And if you've got the registration on your device and it's not in the vehicle, you're pretty much limiting the use of that vehicle to the person who's got, the registration.
Lend them your phone at the same time.
Yeah, I think so, right?
I'm told in Chittenden County, the state's attorney has said, if someone steals a vehicle, unless they admit to stealing the vehicle, she won't prosecute them. They have to admit they stole the vehicle. Is that, you've heard that, is that?
That's consistent with general themes anyway, I have heard from that county.
Imagine that, steal a car, you gotta.
Oh, good, I'll go steal from Chittenden County, I'll go come and steal one of your vehicles, you know, a Corvette maybe.
Right.
I'm going
Just
to,
trade him.
Bring
He
it-
wants,
Bring
he doesn't have,
1950 car over.
he doesn't have a Honda in his collection, so
Yeah.
take it as a trade.
It is an antique. Okay, all right, sir.
Jared,
Yes.
Tony, you like this? 13?
There are just general challenges for law enforcement, whether you're talking about electronic driver license, with a device, something that Deputy Commissioner and I were at a conference on mobile electronic driver license. It's just there are some physical operational challenges with, generally I would not want to handle somebody's phone.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to handle another device. If it's cold out, I'm wearing gloves. I've got a flashlight at night. That's really the nighttime thing. Those problems, they're still trying to work out. But again, this creates an option in statute. I mean, you still carry, have your paper documents.
I mean, you have to take the phone back to the vehicle, you'd have to have it there, what happens when the.
Well, quite frankly, I would never want that phone to leave the site of the owner, the phone.
But you have the registration by the plate, so that's just like
Correct.
another.
Yeah, I would rather just, even if they just kind of like flash that to me and I can say, okay, they've got that, good. The rest I'm going to get back on my
Okay, so
mobile
you're gonna
data.
get it from the plate,
Yeah.
okay,
Correct.
okay, so there's no need to, okay. Yeah,
And Senator Ingles, I think for the success of the modernization we can work out those concerns, but for the success of this project and to serve all the people that we do, we need to have this alternative. And, that's why we've talked about, we're still, you can choose to put it on your phone, but if you come in, it's gonna be regular paper. I think that's the other thing. It's going to be regular paper with marking, so to, protect some fraudulent activities, which is gonna be a huge cost savings. So, it is, I think the language, I just wanna go back, there's no expectation that an officer is gonna take the phone. Actually, that would probably be a violation.
Right.
Right, because they can only look at the phone to validate that they have the registration.
I just don't want to set law enforcement up for failure, and if you guys are comfortable with it, then I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I can see all kinds of things going on, and well, he took my phone and did this and
The
did that.
department is good with this as a policy.
but why, now that you can actually look at the plate, and the plate will tell you that it's a valid registry, if the car is legally registered, why do you need to have anything more than that to verify? I mean, in terms of certificate of registration, I can see why, you want to, any more than you would if it was stolen, you would know that from the plate as well, not that somebody had a paper registration that they handed you.
That kind of presumes that law enforcement's the only one looking at them though. So I mean, you got inspection processes that are gonna happen where they need to look. at your
Insurance
registration,
companies.
which does, raise the question of if I'm maintaining it only on my phone.
I can't get a car inspected that isn't registered.
Correct.
I never tried it, but
That was the question I asked earlier. Chief Overton said that it just gives another interaction with law enforcement with the driver. You ask them a question, how do they react? Do they like
And I just want to add that we have had situations where, an officer engages on a car stop, finds out the vehicle's stolen long before even the owner knows it's stolen and reported. So you can't just 100% rely on that.
Okay, question?
It just seems like this is gonna be most problematic in those sticky situations, maybe with stolen plates and the plates aren't matching with the vehicle and you're looking for registration and fumbling with phones. And I just feel like this is gonna introduce a great deal of challenge in but I don't know.
Already there.
Law enforcement's okay with this, and I'm fine.
And again, from the department, and, we'll do education, we'll do outreach, it exists today. I mean, to Senator Kitchell's point, someone's borrowing your car and you don't have your registration in there. What is the conversation? It happens today, and I don't think we've found that we've been in sticky situations with that.
I just leave it like this.
Okay,
Okay, section 14, we're dealing with registration still, but now we're talking about fees. So under statute, there are places where it talks about the registration fee for pleasure cars in section 361
They don't like talking about fees.
and motorcycles in section 364. And then there is also in section 362, the registration fees for specialized fuel motor vehicles, and all of these things are defined. Under the fee structure, the registration fee for those specialized fuel motor vehicles is 1 3/4 times what the registration fee would otherwise be. This is making it clear in two places. First, in the registration statute for pleasure cars, that if you have a pleasure car that is a plug-in electric vehicle, it is registered at the pleasure car rate. So that's the change in section 361, and then the change in section 362, and this is all of the language in subsection B, starting on line 11, that notwithstanding the fact that specialized fuel motor vehicles are registered at this 1 3/4 times rate, if it is a pleasure car that happens to be a plug-in electric vehicle, it's not registered at that 1 3/4 times rate. Same if it's a motorcycle that's a plug-in electric vehicle. So this is making it clear in statute, consistent with my understanding of the DMV's current practice, that if, for example, you have a Tesla, that's going to be registered at the $74 or $136.
same as a gasoline engine.
Exactly.
It's the same.
I didn't realize it wasn't the same.
It was unclear.
Well, they're making it clear.
They're making it.
Because it's gonna be
Why do
more.
we want to specify the amount? Why don't we make it consistent with pleasure vehicle?
It is. It's saying that,
But it says it shall be $74.
right,
Why do we want to put in a specific amount if
Oh.
you update the fee?
this is the fee for pleasure cars.
We
Where you
update
see that.
fees routinely. And so if we say, all right, we're gonna do a fee increase for
Right.
in general, and it goes
That's
from
changed the
74 to
statute.
$80, every time we do that, we have to go in and change
In statute, yeah.
every
That's
single,
been the practice.
That's what a fee bill does.
okay.
What is this thing? A fee bill?
We haven't been here long
We haven't-
enough.
That's Senator Chip.
Yeah.
He will speak.
They're mysterious creatures.
All right, so it goes in and amends every single figure that's scattered throughout.
I knew he couldn't sit there without speaking. Yes, Senator Chip.
So, I'm sorry, not regardless of fee bills, but my other role in South Burlington City Council, we went through and did ordinance updates and we pulled out all the fees so that the ordinance has been referred to and make it so that we wouldn't need to warn a new ordinance. So it's easier
Yeah, I guess
to
that's exactly what I'm
update and
thinking.
change our fees. Is that something that we do in state statute in any way to?
So I think without getting into the territory of talking about a fee bill, the General Assembly sets fees. The administration, except in limited instances like with state parks that they can do through rulemaking, it is in statutes, it's the General Assembly that's required to change them. I think theoretically, you could pull them all out of Title 23 and then have one section that had all of the fees. I think that would be a lot more work than going in and finding the fees that are to be increased in a fee bill and changing them. Senator Kitchell, to your comment though, this would only be specifying in one place what the pleasure car fee is. It's not saying, and plug-in electric vehicles are $74, so you need to change it in two places. This is just in one place. So if they were to change the fee, if you were to change with the General Assembly to change the registration fee for a pleasure car, then the plug-in electric vehicle pleasure car would track with it. You wouldn't need to change it in two places.
Yes.
A follow-up might be, would it be at all far-fetched to imagine a world where we allow the commissioner with all of her endless powers to be able to set these fees at certain amounts without having to go through? Fair enough. I'm the new guy.
That's like the biggest magic wand
God.
anyone could
You wanna get the
do.
commissioner?
They call her Magic Wanda.
Okay, yes.
And do, what are the vehicles that do have to pay the 1.75?
Go ahead, Mike.
I didn't hear your question.
What are the vehicles that do have the increased registration? fee?
So anything that's gonna be registered over the pleasure car rate, so anything not pleasure car, trucks at something over
So
609.
it's not how they're fueled, it's the weight by weight.
Correct, so it starts out with the fuel because anything that's not, so specialized fuels or anything that's not gas or diesel, right?
Like, for example, what would be a specialized fuel that's not gas or diesel or electric? Okay, propane,
But-
steam engine.
Correct.
Compressed
Anything
natural gas.
that isn't specifically gas or diesel would be considered.
Hydrogen.
Yeah, are there very many?
Anything that's not gas or diesel is,
How many of those registrations do we have?
I don't have that answer off the top of my head.
Two.
I do know that one of our larger trash companies has
Right.
purchased.
Right.
one.
Compressed gas, yeah.
Right, and if they're larger trucks, so those are
I
based.
think the Schwann's trucks do, or, the Schwann's trucks are.
I was thinking we should double the registration fee of all trucks.
And I
I'm
think,
sorry.
and I think it's important,
Good job.
you know,
Yeah,
You didn't even twitch.
so
He's the-
one of the things that we found out is that, especially with the change in some of the trucks that Mike is referring to, is that we were not having consistent interpretation of the statute. And we had some branch offices processing these vehicles differently than others, and that's when, so we brought this forth to you. We don't want to change our practice, but we want clear language, so consistency occurs.
Right now, we are treating the same as any other pleasure car. We're not having the higher rate for the Teslas.
Correct, because the Teslas are just your regular pleasure cars.
So this is just making it clear what in fact has been practiced with rare exception. But we obviously out in the future are gonna be looking at
Yes.
the impact and whether we do it through registration or some other means will be a future discussion.
There is language that is proposed for the transportation bill that the House is about to start looking at that would be directing the department and the agency to work on this, developing a mileage-based user fee. And under the construct that's proposed for the T-bill, the mileage-based user fee, also called a road usage charge or a vehicle miles travel tax, where there would be a fee that was owed on the miles that were driven. That would be applicable for battery electric vehicles, and it would, in its construct, have the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles actually default. So change what you're clarifying here at some point in the future to have those be registered at that 1 3/4
The
rate.
only problem with vehicle mileage, you have to be able to identify how much of that mileage is in Vermont versus
Oh, no,
another
that'd
state.
be a disaster.
The construct that is in the language that is not putting anything into codified law at present does not distinguish between miles driven in Vermont and miles driven outside of Vermont because it's based on the reading at inspection
I
stations.
understand that. So I'm just thinking, you know, my son travels to Newport, Rhode Island routinely. His mileage and his charging and use of vehicles, except for the 18 miles to get to the New Hampshire border, is not in Vermont. So 80% of his mileage probably is not even in Vermont. But all under this scenario, his charge would be a default that all miles traveled is on, would be on Vermont roads.
Yeah. And I think that's something that'll need to be
Tourists would
considered
pay.
in the future.
Well, they would
Um,
pay by some kind of surcharge on their, fast charge. That's how we would get
I think
it.
what charge?
Fast charging.
Like a per kilowatt hour fee.
That's, everybody should pay on that.
There are some states, Oregon, for example, where in their pilot project, they have like the fobs that go into the port that is used for the onboard diagnostics inspection. And that there's an option to link it to GPS data, so they're able to parse out where the miles are driven. But that then requires this additional device potentially
Okay,
monitoring
where
where
you
you're
want to
going.
check the 14? Or you want to pass over?
No, I think for now, it's just clarifying the practice,
Okay.
so
We're all right, okay.
14.
Closed?
Yeah.
Did we close 13?
That was the carrying of the registration
Yeah.
certificate.
I think we did after a lot of
Yeah, I
discussion.
guess we're done with that. Okay, 14, 15, what do we got?
14 and 15 go together.
Oh,
That's
okay.
making the clarification in two
All
places.
right.
Okay, section 16, this would be something totally new.
Sorry. On 13, before we move on.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I completely trust Mr. Pecos and otherwise, but does this committee see any value in having Colonel Birmingham in just to speak to this electronically portable device with the registration? I'm just thinking of the circumstances in the middle of the night, freezing cold.
we can do that.
Yeah.
if you want to.
They have the registration from the plate, so they're getting all the information they need from that perspective.
That plate's not matching the car. They are really concerned something's happening. Does this cause or introduce a great deal of issues with touching or having to see a phone that they might also need to use road instructions?
If they get on the phone, they would also get from the plate. So it's not getting additional information.
But if the plate's a stolen plate.
They get the driver's license, so they would like,
I don't want.
I'm not opposed to having them come in.
And Senator, you're allowed to do it today with your insurance card. And we're an insurance state and we're required to carry an insurance card. And so having that on your phone and presenting that to law enforcement is acceptable. So this is, it's modeling
Can you do it with your license?
your
We're
insurance.
about to talk
License
about that.
registration.
Oh, we're gonna talk about licenses coming
That was the
up.
very next section.
Trying to create work for us, but have you talked to?
I have not had direct conversation with Chief Burke, the Chiefs Association.
But no, we should have it.
Make a note of that, okay?
Okay,
Section
so section 16, this would create a brand new medium to show a credential for your driver's license. This is not, as I originally thought when the DMV sent me their list of things to go in the bill, like adding it to your Apple Wallet. This would be something beyond that. So this is giving I'm gonna go through the language in more detail, but big picture, giving the commissioner the authority to issue a mobile driver's license or mobile non-driver identification card in addition to the physical credentials that are already issued, provided that certain requirements are met in terms of the data it has, the data that can be shared, how it can be used. And this is addressing a type of technology that's beyond just displaying something on your phone, whereas you're sharing data without there needing to be any transfer of a device from the person whose credential is on the device to, for example, a TSA agent, law enforcement, someone who's checking IDs to get into a bar, all the other instances that you would use your driver's license in physical form. So that's the big picture, the details. Adding to
And can
statute.
I just say, and we are not asking to have this replace your actual credential. And thank you for that clarity.
Can you also give us the background why you're asking for it at all?
So it is actually a request, so I think, to the point of many states are doing it, there are some best practices out there. And the Maryland just rolled this out. It is about TSA, it is about banks, sometimes it is about going to the drugstore and showing your identification because they want to validate it. It's the individual's choice to use the app. It's not something that we're going to manage, so they will choose to sign up. The apps that are available do protect that personal information. There are limits on what is available. And it is a consumer request. It is a demand that's coming from your constituents and from residents.
Well,
And-
keep your phone charged at all times, I guess.
And I think the young, I think there is a population that does do that. Me, I forget to, but and so that we are trying to move forward with that and align Vermont with other states. And TSA is probably the biggest one. And just, if you've been to the Burlington Airport, just even the scanning system that they have, but they're not checking. They're looking at your boarding passes now into that system, but if you go to, the check-in at the airline, they're looking for your identification. Once you do that, I'm not sure if you're aware, but if you've flown, they're not asking for your license at TSA. They're asking for your boarding pass, especially if it's electronic, to move customers through.
They aren't looking for that anymore. I've only done international travel, so you have to have your.
I'm not gonna counter any of your operational arguments. I think that makes a lot of sense for the regular, everyday type of concerns. My issue, my pause is just on those sticky situations when you are dealing with a circumstance where everything you do might then be dragged before a court of law. And that's where if we start having phones be the reliable or allowed vehicle for any type of important documentation that men, people, women, persons with guns have, I just want to make sure they're okay with what the implications are.
So I think, again, it's not our intent to replace the credential. You'll still be required. We will still issue, when law enforcement asks for your license, you should have that license. I want to point out, they still have that data. Law enforcement, if I say my name is Wanda Manoli and I don't have my credential, they can bring in, date of birth, Wanda Manoli. They have access. They see what information we have. They have access to that photo. They have access to that data. So we're not capping our officers with what information that they have available to them through DMV.
But you just redid our whole license, and you said it's got 99 different security features.
Right.
So my question is, I guess, is that this, using technology, this will provide the same protection and those security features that you felt were necessary to give us these new licenses that make us look like we're being electrocuted.
That was one of the security elements.
Yeah, cut my hair like that. So my question is, why did we do all that on the licenses, and how do you replicate that here?
We're not replicating it. Our credential protects someone's identity. This is a tool for the consumer. This is something that we are not going to manage. This is for the individual that wants to have their credential with protected information available on their phone, available for them. This is not a replacement of our license.
So what do you need all that for your license? What is that, what?
For the 22 security elements, why do we need that? So we follow AMBA's best practices, and it's about protecting identity, and it's about protecting fraud on duplication of licenses.
And this system,
This system is for you to download the app and choose to put specific information that protects your identity on the phone and use that in different places. You are not taking a picture of your license and putting it on your phone and having that acceptable. It's an actual app that you would go into and you choose.
so what does this do for you? This is more of a convenience
It's
to
a custom.
the customer, as opposed to any application you would have that's as a department. Is that kind of the end result here?
Yes.
There it goes.
Well,
No, I'm done.
I can see that probably a lot of this is matching up the modernization of what you have coming, the new system and all of that stuff. And I just, when I think I'm past it, and I'm past it, and Tony, thank you. I just think we're setting law enforcement up. For just in situations where it could just, and that's just where I'm at. I mean, I just don't want to set you guys up in a bad, and I want modernization. I want all what we've done. I want everything to be, I like modernization. I'm starting to have a real problem of that officer, for whatever reason, having that phone and then it going to court and then saying, he did this or she did this and all of that. I'm scared to death of that.
So Senator, we're not asking to have this,
Right, I know you're not.
and so it's not, you're still going to have
It's in addition to and
Yeah,
not
I
instead.
get it, and I want the modernization and I want it to be.
And so an officer that necessarily doesn't have to be acceptable. This is for the consumer. We have our residents that travel every day, that travel through airports. This is a tool for them and it's a consumer choice. We don't sign you up when you get your license. You are going to choose if you want to access this. And that is the goal. And I think that's really important. This is not about creating a vulnerability for the law enforcement in this state. It's not, it is not a replacement of your license.
So the officer could, if you were to provide the officer your phone, say it's on you as the officer, like, no, I want to see the driver.
If I was an officer, I wouldn't even
Absolutely.
want to hold that damn thing. I just would,
First of all, it's an international security standard though, because it's very robust. I think it was Colorado was out a little up front, and before that came, and they're having problems. The fact that from the presentation that we had with AMBA, about this, is that there's actually more security features. So from a law enforcement perspective too, some of it, depending on the technology that's adopted, there's also a Bluetooth situation where you can also maybe, depending on what's adopted, get that information without physically touching something. One of the things that I did raise in that context, from a law enforcement perspective, was just is that nighttime, I mean, there are those specific challenges. Law enforcement will have to work through that. But when you think about the other gains of security, like the commissioner said, it's actually more secure because of how it's an international security standard, a digital security standard, but also think about the advantages. If you are somebody that wants to go to a nightclub, for example, instead of showing, hey, here's my address, here's everything about me, how heavy I am, where I live, and all that. Now I can just say, are you 21 or older? I can limit what I want another party to see. If it's a law enforcement interaction and I'm choosing to go with that, then it's an automatic, then I can see everything that I would see in the license credential. So just want to throw that out there that it's not perfect from a law enforcement perspective physically, but when you think about all the other benefits, especially the identity theft and the levels of the standards for encryption of your data, there's a lot of benefits.
I'm not disagree with any of that. I think I share your concern, Senator Ingalls, and I think a lot of this can be dispelled by just having law enforcement testify at some of this language and give us their thoughts. And to your point, I'm all for making it easier for international travelers, but I would be concerned if we enabled this, then we can clearly communicate to the populace that they also still need to have their actual driver's license. I'm just worried about those sticky situations where somebody gets pulled over and my phone, my battery's not charged, it's where my driver's license is. And if we didn't make it clear that they have to have their driver's license when they operate a motor vehicle, which is a dangerous weapon, I'm worried that we are making it even more difficult to be a police officer this day and age. I don't want to do that.
So we are in the language specifying it, and I think if we fast forward, it's a tool that will be available where it's not going to be connected when you renew your license or when you get a license that we say, hey, here's the app. It's going to be a tool that is available to the consumer that asks, and that is online. So we are not trying to replace or put our officers at any risk. This is about modernizing and making available to our population all over in our state, and to align our business practices with other states. We have states that are much larger than us, that are extremely successful have implemented it. I will share Andrea, she even used Maryland's language, I think, as a guiding point And it is successful, so.
Just to be clear, we would still require the physical driver license?
Yes,
to
and
be
the
in
lang-
car?
And the, on you have,
Correct.
and that is clear in the language, I can't remember what
So-
section that was.
12.
What is clear in this is that the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles may, it's not required, to issue a mobile driver's license. It shall be, to an individual in addition to and not instead of a license or non-driver identification card.
On line 15 and 16 on page 12.
I am not aware where in statute it says all the places that you are required to carry your driver's license with you. To the extent that that does exist in statute, this doesn't change that. This is one new section added to Title 23. A couple other things I just want to mention, and maybe it would help if I walk through the language. Senator Ingalls, to your concern about handing your device over, unlike the language that we talked about earlier with the registration being on your phone, and unlike the existing language with being able to show proof of insurance on your phone, this is different because if issued the mobile driver's license, this is on line 18 on the screen, if issued the mobile driver's license or mobile non-driver identification card requires a number of things, one of which is allow the credential holder to maintain physical possession of the device on which the mobile driver's license or mobile non-driver identification card is accessed during verification. The technology cannot be implemented, the credential cannot be issued unless it exists in a medium where you don't have to hand your phone number.
I realize we're talking about passenger vehicles and all of that, but Bill, on trucks and all of that, which we're not talking about truck, but we're talking about, my question being, is all of this electronic now when you guys are stopping in the DMV checks and all of that stuff? Is everything that you have, or is the truck and bus, are they doing all electronic stuff? I mean, you guys are in and out of states all over the place. What are you guys doing?
Well, Bill Smith from our Truck and Bus Association. What we typically do is electronic logging of the use of the vehicle and the driver's hours is something that's out there that's readily accessible to the commercial motor vehicle enforcement folks. But so that's a layer of electronics we're not discussing here. As far as an electronic license goes, that's going to come down to what's in the pocket or the phone of the actual driver in the truck, which typically is not owned by the driver of the truck in that instance. So it's the owner of the truck is responsible for the condition of the vehicle, right, and the actions of that driver in their employment. Are we responsible for providing electronic licensing credentials for them? No, we're not. Is that something that maybe is coming with a commercial driver's license? I don't think that's part of what we're discussing here.
So this is not a commercial driver's license.
No, I was just more trying to find out about the electronics of what the other industries are doing. And the concerns that other people had,
That
that's
has
all.
nothing to do with commercial driving.
No, I know that. I was trying to get to the point of having information on a private device.
Yes, Senator.
I think we beat this subject pretty bad, but I just imagine that police officer last night, 40-degree wind chill, having to stand outside of a car looking at a phone because that person didn't know that they also had to have a printed copy and they thought they had a digital copy of the license.
But you're still having to take that license and look at it.
Well, that person didn't have a license, the physical copy, because this day and age, they have everything on their phone and they just didn't think they needed.
No, but
to have
they're
a
still
license.
standing out in 40-degree weather holding, not
Like a car
a
door.
device, but they're holding a
Or taking it back
car.
in the vehicle.
I've been pulled over too many times because,
Oh, I
they,
see.
and so they take it back to their car and they make you sit there and sweat
Oh.
for a good amount of time. I don't want them standing outside of the cold looking at a phone because they
You
can't.
can offer them.
Oh, I see. You're offering insight that some of us don't
They haven't
have.
taken me to their car yet.
Yeah, wants to. Go ahead.
So I'm going to put like a big star by this, but clearly the video that I'm going to suggest that I send to you that you watch is made by, I think it's AMBA, in support of this technology, but it has cartoon characters going through the process of having a mobile driver's license and not having
We can
it.
handle that.
Oh, that
I want to see the
would be
video of Cheddar Chicken stop.
Yeah.
That's what I
But
want to see.
it
Not to
works,
see that one.
it works through
You
someone
seem
getting
to be
stopped
very knowledgeable about being
Yeah.
stopped.
Pull over at 6 hours.
with the credential and without the credential. So big caveat, it's designed to like convince you that this is a good idea, but I think it will give you like a visual representation of how this could play out in the real world. And I will say that the video does not factor in weather. It's all very sunny where the characters are.
Okay,
But I will send that to you
There's
after
one more, which
we
is,
adjourn.
I don't have any problem with having state police or other law enforcement in, but Director Pecos is law enforcement. You know, he
Oh,
has
no
sworn
question.
officers.
not anymore.
Well, you had sworn officers under your command, basically.
Do you speak for them?
No, I need to step in. This is about a policy and it's, again, it's not, the purpose is not to replace the license. So we did not engage with law enforcement
But you have
because
law enforcement at the
we have, that focuses on commercial vehicles. And again, this is about the operation and the credentialing.
But there's
So
sworn officers that can pull. over.
absolutely, but Senator, no, our approach was not looking at that.
For what it's worth, I still have a driver's license in my wallet, and I can't take my rotary
Oh, it's
phone with me,
valid.
you know.
Yeah.
It's valid.
Yeah, I like the old.
It
thing.
expired in 1952,
He was 56 then.
and you look handsome, I'm sure.
I'm sorry.
He carries it around.
It's Friday. Oh, you
carries-
could've-
He carries it around Senator Kitchen because it's the only picture that he looks good in. So now I look so young in this picture.
Oh, goodness. It's
Yeah,
so
you
hard
left it in
to-
the pack.
Oh, yeah, because you have.
He has an enhanced.
Oh,
He doesn't look like
Oh, that'd be fairly modern. Yeah.
Not enhanced. You have the star and the American flag.
Oh, wow.
Me and Jim Douglas got the same thing. Same.
You did. Did you go together?
Yeah, we did. Yep. We're the first to do it again.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead.
So do you want me to skip over the details of the language and you can come back to it?
Oh, I think so.
Please.
We know enough, yeah.
Okay, this language is identical to language you have seen before. This was in S-280 as it passed both the House and the Senate. And this was the changes to the total abstinence program, providing the definition of total abstinence, drawing the line in the sand, saying from this point forward, in order to participate in the total abstinence program, you need to totally abstain. It preserved the same exception to what's a drug for drugs that have been prescribed. It still required the same 3 years of total abstention, including using an ignition interlock device if it was applicable. So it wasn't making changes to the program except for putting everyone that's a participant or a future applicant in the same position where going forward, everyone was subject to that total abstinence definition. And if you'll remember, the DNP came in with a flow chart of the different iterations of the program as they had existed, saying this would consolidate it so everyone's operating under the same rules. I can walk through the language, but this is another one of those instances where you were good with this last year and the House was good with this last year.
So much of it's just changing person to individual.
Yes, so much of it is that, the first like 3 pages, where you're gonna get your substantive changes is gonna be on page 17, starting at line 12, where you get your definition of drug, which incorporates that unless it's being used as prescribed. And then on the next page, the total abstinence means total abstinence piece. So I can walk through it. The other thing I will flag for you is one of the things that this committee spent a significant amount of time on was the effective dates language here and the notification requirements for what the commissioner is responsible for doing in terms of, and that's in the next section, of alerting people to the fact that going forward, this is the statutory requirements that apply to you. And then when it takes effect, and it's effect on passage and doesn't have, it has a look back effect for purposes of going forward, you are now subject to these requirements. So the committee did spend a lot of time on this last year, refreshing your memory.
And this change doesn't do any changes to what we agreed to last year.
Okay.
This is what Senator Pearson raised a concern about, but then we resolved it, right? So.
Did do what he wanted.
Yes, so he wanted, for purposes of the definition of drug, for it to include cannabis that's being made available through the medical side, through the dispensaries. This does not change the fact that despite the fact that you might be consuming cannabis for a medical condition under Vermont's medical dispensary, it's still a controlled drug. So you would not be able to participate in the total abstinence program if you were consuming cannabis that you're acquiring either through the commercial market or through the medical dispensary.
So we close that out then, because it really is just.
Yeah. That's 4 or 5 pages, that might get us into next week. Except that.
Page 23 already.
So that's section 17 and section 18. I really, really, really hate the fact that I have to talk about section 19 again. This is everything that you tried to change last year with the milk hauler permits and getting rid of the milk hauler license, that if you were registered at 90,000 pounds was $10, if you were registered at 80,000 pounds was $382, and changing the pricing for the all products. Overweight permit. There's a really great flow chart that the DMV provided last year. No changes have been made to this language from what you were fine with last year and what the House was fine with last year. I'm happy to walk through it more, but there haven't been any changes.
All right, everybody?
I'm good. Well, we were just trying to. Can you just explain again what?
Yeah, so under current law, and I see that Commissioner Manoli has her flow chart, I'm gonna refer to the language form of this. There are 3 ways that you can legally haul milk at 90,000 pounds. You can register at 80,000 pounds and pay a larger fee just to haul milk. You can register at 90,000 pounds, and it's only the milk hauler vehicles that can register at that weight and pay $10 for that same milk hauler permit. Or you can register at 80,000 pounds and pay a larger amount, $415, to get an any products permit. This would be taking those 3 means of hauling milk at 90,000 pounds, collapsing it to 2 means, and either you would register at 90,000 pounds and only carry milk, or you would register at 80,000 pounds, pay $382, and then you can carry anything up to
You
90,000.
go to the next page, you'll see it's an elimination of a $10 permit. And you had Chris Root do a fiscal
Yeah.
analysis last year.
It was
on this.
$18,000 per year was expected last year with your
A lot of
fiscal
paperwork for $18,000.
To decrease.
decrease.
So we're changing fees, but we're changing it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Well, I know you're not, I know you're more against it, so,
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
seriously, I do remember concerns about weights, but DMV is comfortable with this language.
There's a different section on weights.
That's right.
You were getting to the other piece about weights that you did have.
This is about eliminating a permit that is not necessary for milk haulers and consolidating it into one. There is some lost revenue, but instead of having 2, we're gonna consolidate, they're gonna have 1 permit. It's the simplest way for.
So we're
And this is a
losing
relic
revenue
of a
because
federal
we're getting rid of the 10.
Right.
And replacing it with,
You either wouldn't need a permit if you registered at 90,000 pounds,
Yeah.
or you would register at 80,000 pounds and get the all products permit. And that's got a slight reduction in the fee from $415 to $382.
There's some administrative savings sometimes. You have 2 permits instead of 3.
We didn't look at the I mean, it would be time.
it'd be pretty tiny, I thought you were gonna say.
It would be time and tiny.
I have an issue just to flag, which I think I sent an email to Mike about this, about milk, is the other section of dealing with milk. trucks.
No.
Milk trucks not being able to drive, oh no, it wasn't milk trucks, SAF trucks. The SAF trucks want the same exemption as milk trucks.
Stop truck.
So milk trucks don't have to follow the local road exemption. Or local road prohibition on that, when the local
When
locality.
it gets muddy, they post those roads, is it?
No, so they could post a road for during mud season, and the milk trucks could still drive on. That's my understanding, right? Because I thought the milk trucks were exempt because you have to take
never heard of that.
But that would be local as well. Yeah.
What we used to do as a town, and I might not be getting that, Andy, but as you were part of the select board as well, the select board used to issue the special permit. Remember, they used to come to us and they used to get a special permit for like $10 or whatever. I know the milk trucks used to do that, the grain trucks used to do that. And that allowed them to be on the town roads during mud season when it was posted at that time.
They needed a permit. I thought they were just had like an agricultural exemption, dump trucks,
Not that I've ever heard of, no.
not to anything. Well, I'll look into it more, because so the SAP folks were saying they have the same situation when SAP is gonna go bad. So having to sit there and wait till the roads open up was just as bad for them as it was.
I know when I was involved with the town, we used to be able to issue a permit to them that gave them exemptions. On the town roads, right,
We would not have authority over.
right.
Right, so, but in this case, they would be able to purchase the all permits, all products permit for this now to go up to the 90,000 pounds.
Okay.
That's a town issue. But a lot of times, don't they try to bring those trucks out early in the morning while the roads are.
It was the guy, at least, I think that's it, and, or maybe it's part of Ricky Goodrich.
Yeah, that's Cabot. That's your district.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that part was.
No, it's not. It's Cabot. And they do a lot of hauling.
Yeah, that's why they.
Goodrich was, are you talking about the one up in Albany?
No, the one
On Route 2.
Okay, so they're trying to put a line up over the top of the road, a sap line over the top of the road, that's.
So are you closing out the milk collar permit or no?
Sure.
This is gonna take you to page 27. This, again, we're going back to carrying permits and things on your phone as opposed to in physical paper copy. So currently, for the subchapter that covers the issuance of permits for overweight, overlength, things like that, one of the sections for the weight piece says that all permits, and this is on page 28 at line 5, all permits issued pursuant to just this section shall be carried in the vehicle. The fine for violation of this subdivision shall be $150. A violation of this subdivision shall be considered an offense separate from an overweight violation. What's happening in section 20 is that language is being repealed, but then it's being added in section 21 as a new section that would apply for all of the permits issued under the subchapter. So any of the permits issued under that subchapter would need to be carried in the motor vehicle. And then it's using that same language that was proposed to be added for registration in either paper or electronic form, tracking the language that says use of a portable electronic device to display this does not constitute the ability to access other contents of the device, and then tracks the same $150, and that the violation is not shall be considered an offense separate from the not having the right permit. So you're not carrying your permit and you're not having your right permit. So it's maintaining status quo for that one permit, expanding it to all of the permits issued under the subchapter, and then giving the same allowance for showing it on your personal device. And not to go back to the driver's license piece, this is different from that in that it would be showing something on your phone, not this transfer of data through an app.
And the purpose of asking for this language is, I think, and just so everyone understands, and in the industry, you may be a company coming from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Illinois. You may have a third party that does your permits for you. You don't know who the driver, the assumption that every driver owns your vehicle and they're applying for the permits is the wrong assumption. And that the permits needed are sent to the driver through the third party or through the company. And they don't necessarily have access to the paper. It goes back to, printable and how the business is doing. So we want to support industry and allow for them to utilize this mechanism if they choose.
My recommendation is that for commercial purposes, these permits are mostly going to apply, and this makes sense to me because they're going to have certain standards and be comfortable with it. And I drink a lot of coffee. Are we going to take a break anytime soon?
Okay, we are